Hello guys, and welcome back to another video of my Quest System series. I know it's been a long time since the last one was uploaded, but I worked on a personal project until yesterday, so there was no time for any videos. But don't worry, now I'm back and we can now continue to work on our slot-based saving and loading system. So the first thing that I will do is open up our widgets folder and open up the save slot. But then I'll drag that aside, and instead we will create a new user interface widget blueprint that we'll just call save load widget. This one will contain all of our individual save slots, as well as a button to start a new game. So first, what we'll do is add an image to our canvas panel, and we will use this anchor here to fill all the space, and then set the offset left, top and bottom and right to 0, so it fills out the entire screen here. We can uncheck the is variable, just call it BG for background, and under color and opacity you can select something like a dark, or let's just use black here. On top of that background we will add a text. Let's just call that text, make it a variable, anchor it to the upper center here. We'll set the alignment in X to 0.5 and the position in X to 0, so it appears right in the middle here. Then we'll move it down in Y by, let's say, 32 pixel. Yeah. And let's check size to content. Also increase the Z order to 1, so it definitely appears above our background. Increase the font size to, let's say, 32. And then we can enter some default text here, which will just be choose a slot to load your game or start a new one, exclamation mark. So this will just be something like an instructional text for our player. After that we will add a scroll box to our canvas panel. Check the is variable and call it our slot box. Also set the Z order to 1, anchor it to the upper center as well, alignment to 0.5 in X, position in X to 0. We'll set the position in Y to something like 108 and give it a size of 720 by 900 pixel. Last thing that we'll need is a button, so drag that on top of our canvas panel, and we can call that the new continue button, so it will be used for starting a new game or just continuing, based on whether you're trying to load or save the game right now. We'll anchor that to the upper right anchor here, set the alignment in X to 1 and in Y to 0. Then set the position in X to -200 and in Y to, let's say, 112. Let's also increase the size in X to 275 pixel and in Y to 100. Increase the Z order to 1. And on top of that button we'll add a text and make that a variable, call that button text. By default it will say new game, and we'll make that black with a font size of 30, and also change the title bold italic. Then scroll down and set the visibility to self-hit test invisible, so we can click the text and hit the button with that instead of hitting the text. Alright, compile and save. Then we'll head over to the graph and add some variables. So we will add one that's just called TPC for a third person character, and the type will be a third person character, obviously. Make that editable and expose on spawn, so we will tell our widget about the third person character when we create it, and afterwards we will add the amount of slots. That will be an integer, editable and exposed on spawn. Then we need a boolean called load, so is a widget currently used for loading or saving. also make that editable and expose on spawn. And we will compile, set the default to true. Afterwards, add another variable that we'll call all slots. Make that an array with the type saveSlot reference. And yeah, basically that's it. Compile and save. Let's now head over to our save slot, go to the graph here, and as you might recall from the last episode, we did not add any functionality yet, but we'll do that now. So here we also need some variables. First off, the slot index, which will be an integer, editable and exposed on spawn. Then a reference to the load widget, which will be the load save or save load widget reference, again editable and exposed on spawn. And finally we will need a save game reference, and that will be a character save reference. Okay, compile and save. Also we want to add one function here called update, and what this will do now, we'll check does save game exist. User index will be 0 and we have to figure out a slot name. To do that, drag in the load widget, get the TPC, get the default slot name, and append our slot index converted to a string. Plug that in for the slot name, and now we know whether we already saved to that slot once or not. So let's add a branch for the return value here. If there is no save game on this slot right now, we'll drag in our save load button and set is enabled. For the in is enabled, we want to get a load widget. Just copy that over and get the load boolean, which we want to connect with the not boolean, and then plug in for the in is enabled. That basically means if we have no save game, we will check whether the widget was created for loading purposes, and if load is true, our button will be set to not be enabled because we cannot load a game that was not saved. But if it was created for saving purposes, we can still access the save slot that we haven't saved to before. Afterwards, drag in the canvas and set visibility to hidden, because obviously we cannot display the date or the character level if there is no save game. And then drag in the save game, set it to null, just reset that, afterwards return. So that's it for the false path. If it's true, however, we will load the game from slot and plug in the slot name that we already figured out here. Cast it to character save. If the cast fails, just go into the return node, but if not, we will set our save game to the as character save. Then we'll drag in our level text, set text, and we will set it to our save game's level, save level variable, converted to a text, and here we will uncheck use grouping. The same thing we want to do with the region text, so set text, get the save region of a save game, save region, then we will use enum to string and convert the string back to a text. Okay, so level and region were set. If we head over to the designer tab, you will see that we also have to worry about the time text. So drag in the time text, set text, and for the in text we will use a format. For the format we'll just type in curly brackets hour, close the curly brackets, add a colon, open another curly bracket, type in minute, and close it. Then we can copy over our save game and get the saved hour and save minute. Here for the hour we want to use select string, convert that to a text, and then plug that in for the hour. we want to check whether our saved hour is greater than 10. Plug that in for the pick A. If that is true, so if it's A, we'll just use the saved hour, convert it to a string. But if not, we want to use append string, and we want to append 0 to our saved hour and plug that in for B. Same thing goes for our saved minutes, so we can copy over, select string, convert it to a text here, plug that in for the minute. For the pick A, we want to check whether or not the saved minute is greater than 10. Actually, we don't want to check whether it's greater, but whether it's less than 10. Plug that in for the pick A and connect the append to the A and the converted string for the B. Same thing for our saved minutes, so check whether that's less than 10. If so, we will convert it to a string and use an append node. Append 0 to the minute. Plug that in for the A, and for B just use save minute convert to a string. Afterwards, drag in the save load button here and we'll set is enabled to true before getting the canvas and setting its visibility to be hit test invisible. After that, we can return. And that's it for our update function. Don't close the save slot. We will come in here later and add the event for clicking the button. Let's go to our save load widget, and here we'll create a function called generate slots. What this will simply do is run a for loop, the first index being 0 and the last index being the amount of slots minus 1. Now for every index we want to create a widget which will be a save slot. Slot index comes from our index of the for loop, and the load widget will be a reference to cells. Then drag in our all slots array and add the return value to that. Finally, get the slot box, add child, and plug in the return value as well. When it's completed, we can return. And if you know that you will call the generate slot function multiple times because, for example, the amount of slots changes during the game, you will also want to clear the all slots array before and copy the slot box and clear children before going into the for loop. Right. Now we also need an update function in our save load widget. Here we first want to get our instructional text and set text. We'll use a select node and the index will be our load. If load is true, we can copy over what we typed in here as the default and paste it. If it's false, we will say select a slot to save your game, exclamation mark. Then also drag in the button text and set text as well. In text, again use a select node, connect the load as the index. If load is true, it will say new game. If not, just continue. And after we updated both of our texts, we just want to get our all slots, run for each loop, and for every slot we want to call the update function. Connect that to the loop body, and when it's completed, return. Right, compile, save, go to the event graph, and on event construct we first want to generate the slots before updating. Also don't close this one because we have a button in here as well that we cannot implement right away. Now we want to open up our third person character and change something in the way event begin play is handled. So in our third person character, go to the event graph. We can close our save and load functions. Don't need those right here. Here on event begin play, we'll disconnect this and add a custom event instead that we will call start game. This one will have two inputs. First a boolean called load question mark, and if that's true, we'll also need an integer called load slot. For now, just connect that up here. On event begin play, we will do something different. We will set game paused to true, then create a widget, which will be the save load widget. The third person character will be a reference to ourselves. Load will be set to be true, and amount of slots, we can promote that to a variable called amount of save slots. Let's compile and give that a default value, 6, whatever you like. It will work with every number you type in. Then let's promote the save load widget to a variable called save load widget. Make sure to spell that correctly. And then we'll add it to the viewport. Here we want to make sure that the Z order is higher than the one we use for our main widget. I'll just type in 10 to be safe. Further, we want to get the player controller for player index 0 and set show mouse cursor to true. And then we also want to set widget input to true as well. We can add a comment box around that. Event begin play. And the other one here will then read start game. Also, we want to make some modifications to that. Just drag that over, add a bit of space here, and when we start the game we want to set game pause to be false. Then drag in the save load widget and set visibility to hidden. Afterwards we will check whether we are loading the game. Only if it's false we want to set up our prestige points, because if we load, the prestige points array is also loaded. If it's true, however, we will call load game from slot. The from slot being the one from our input here. Then we will spawn the VP Quest Manager. And right before we add to the viewport, we will call toggle with toggle input mode. Function we just created in some of the last videos. Compile and save. The other thing we want to do is add another custom event called continue game, which will again set game paused to be false and toggle input mode and set the save load widget to be hidden. Afterwards we will add one more custom event called show save widget, and here we want to set game pause to true, get widget input and add an if. If widget input is false, we want to toggle the input mode, get our save load widget and set load to be false, connect that to the input mode and the true path. Then we want to call update for the save load widget before setting its visibility to be visible. Can add a comment box around that again. Show save widget. What you want to do is add a key to show the save widget. I will just use Sam. Feel free to use whatever you want. This will just call show save widget. And that's it for the functions in our player character. We can close the third person character now, and back in our save load widget we can select the new continue button, add an on clicked, drag in load, check for that using a branch. If load is true, means we want to start a new game, so drag in the TPC and start game with load being set to false. If it's false, means we're currently trying to save the game, and that means we just want to continue the game when clicking our little button. Okay, we can close the save load widget now. Open up our save slot, because here we also did not implement the button yet, so add an onClicked for the save load button. We want to drag in our load widget, get load question mark, and add a branch. If we are trying to load the game, we want to drag off of our load widget, get the TPC, and start game. This time we want to check load, and the load slot will be our slot index. If it's false, means we want to save the game. So drag off these TPC once again and call save game to slot. To slot will be our slot index, and after we did that, call update. Alright, that's everything we had to do, so let's play test here. If we start a game, we can see our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 save slots, but all of those are empty right now, we never saved. So we can only hit new game, and we start a fresh one without any prestige or level. If we kill some of our spiders now, we reach level 3. Let's go somewhere to check whether our location is also safe. Right here. Then we can hit M, and we want to select a slot to save your game. As you can see, the buttons are enabled now. If we hit continue, everything works just fine. If we select a slot here, our game was saved. We can see our level, region, the time at which we saved. You can see that here. You can also save to other slots and then hit continue. If we close the game now, reopen it, we see all of the slots that we saved to, and we can select any of those and see we're level 3, our experience was saved, and our location. Alright, that's it for the second episode of creating a slot-based saving and loading system. In the next one, we'll just add that all of our current quests are saved as well. So see you then.